Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com, powered by all the Mo Pros out there. I am your host, Michael Hartmann, joined by no one again. We'll get Mike and Naomi back at some point here, I'm sure. But today I am talking with Paul Shirer, founder and CEO of Infinite Ideas AI and director of AI and go-to-market technology at Bridge Partners. Paul spends his time helping organizations evaluate, implement, and scale AI initiatives. And in earlier conversations with him, we found ourselves coming back to a theme that many ops professionals are wrestling with right now. That is, despite massive investment in AI, many organizations are struggling to generate meaningful business impact. That is measurement. We'll explore why that is, where companies are getting AI adoption wrong, how leaders should be thinking about workflow design and decision making, and what practical steps organizations can take to move beyond experimentation and toward measurable value. So, Paul, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Michael. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, excited to talk today.
Yeah, it's an all Texas affair today, since you and I are, about 50 miles apart? Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. You got the north side covered. I got the south side. We got our territories we stay in. So
there we go. There we go. Yeah. Well, again, appreciate it. So let's just dive right in. So when you've talked and what we've sort of trade message about, you've said that many organizations are treating AI as a tooling problem, when in reality it's a workflow and adoption problem. So break that down. What does that mean in your words, and how did you get to that sort of point of view?
Yeah. Well, I got to that point of view by failing, number one. So that helped a little.
That's pain is a good teacher, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I recall, back a couple of years ago, when maybe it was 2.5 years ago now, when the ChatGPT moment hit, and the first thing was like, we need to get ChatGPT, right? And so we everyone got a license, and it was like, and then you'd go look at the usage of that tool, and it would be like, very few people using it at the time. Now I'm sure that would be different if we did it today, but at the time it was very little.
Yeah.
And so you start looking at, how we're going to start transforming the way we work. And really that was the theme from the beginning. If you were getting ahead of it from a strategic standpoint, you were thinking this is going to change, but how long is it going to take? What's it going to take to do that? And what are the baby steps along the way, right? And so a tool is just a tool. It's sort of like a hammer is just a hammer. Like we hear that all the time. It's what it is. But unless you have something to use it on and kind of what you're trying to build, then it's not really all that useful. So I think that the key to this whole thing is, for most organizations, is, start where people are. Don't get way ahead of yourself. The idea that you're going to change away all of your workflows and processes and get people to follow along and do that all at the same time, it's a very difficult thing to do. And I think a lot of folks have done that in terms of how they piloted AI. They're trying to rewire everything. And so I kind of advocate for meet people where they are, how they're currently working, get them to buy in, get them to actually start to use these things and see the value, and let them be your research, and one of the metaphors I use, and not such a metaphor, but a sort of strategic framing I use, is we're working inside organizations, but it's not much different than if you were going to market with a new tool. And so think about your organization as the marketplace, if you will.
Yep.
And what are the pain points? What are the problems? The challenges that they have? And how can we have this new technology come in and help solve some of those problems? So meeting them where they're at, getting their sort of buy-in at the early stages of it. How can you help them create better content, make better decisions, look at analytics in a different way, all the things that we know AI can do, but talk to them about it and start to begin to understand how you can support them with the tool itself. And that means, obviously skilling. It obviously means, onboarding and creating communities of practice, make it be their idea, so to speak, have people share those ideas. Anyway, the point being that I think a lot of folks have been trying to solve the whole thing all at once. I don't think that that's reasonable in terms of transformation within an organization. And you have to have a strategic approach to looking at the workflows, looking at the adoption first, and then kind of slowly moving towards how can you kind of impact and operationalize AI with specific workflows.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea. So for the audience who's listening only, I'm sitting here nodding my head all the way along through Paul's description there, because I think that I like that idea of thinking about this as a little bit of a internal sales and marketing initiative, right? Or go-to-market initiative. That's an interesting one. But your point about meeting people where they are, I think is an often missed one with kind of all change management. I can't remember if we talked about this when we last spoke, but I did some research on change management as I was working with a client a couple of years ago, and I came across a Harvard Business Review article from, like, I want to say it was the late 60s, it may have been the 70s. I don't remember exactly when it had been revised. But what struck me about it was, even though it was that old, right, the principles were still there. And I think, this idea that one size fits all is not realistic. I think, and I don't know if this is true or not, I would imagine there's sort of a bell curve, right, of people who are like, on the one end, you've got the people who are going to be like jumping right in. They're hot to do this. They want to change this. On the other end of the people who are like totally reticent. Why break something that's already working? And then, like, over time, like, you've got this whole big chunk of people who are sort of somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And so thinking that they're all on the one end, right, is probably not going to be successful if you treat everything that way. Now, you could take advantage of those people. I think that you were hinting that, right? You were talking about pockets of community. I mean, when I think about, like, that pocket of community is the ones that are going to really test the boundaries, and then they can help advocate and teach others.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think a good skilling program, there's different levels. We actually put together kind of a different levels of skilling program with one of our, as we were initially rolling out, this about a year and a half ago or so, that we really spent a lot of cycles on this. And the skilling is, giving them some free courses that are on YouTube or LinkedIn Learning. That was obviously the obvious sort of low-hanging fruit. Yeah. And then some certificate programs, maybe paying for a few things. But one of the best things you can do is identify those champions and those folks that are the super users that, and really they can train the folks. They're happy to share all the practice. In fact, they're very vocal about it.
It's an ego boost thing for them, right? So.
Yeah, and it's a career path for them in some ways too. They're seeing it as an opportunity to build not only their skills in their position, but also maybe even leap within the company, or who knows, go somewhere else. But they will be the leaders of a community of practice. So I've stood up probably about I guess 3 or 4 communities of practice now within companies, and you just get them started in Slack or Teams and have those folks that really want to be the champions come in, and they're very vibrant internal communities. I was actually surprised at how vibrant they would be.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the same thing internally. I mean, I'm a big fan of, like, the internal communities for things like that. I think the only thing I've seen that has hampered them is when there's too much concern about what might be said inside those, right? It's kind of the same with it is when you have a customer community, but like I tend to go like, let it go. Like, and if it happens, right, first off, I think it's like teaching kids, right? They fear doing something new, and it's usually the fear is way greater than the reality, right?
That's right. I agree with you.
And I think I'm all for, like, let it flow, right? Set guidelines about the way that you're going to communicate that's acceptable. So that's a little bit different. But if, like, in terms of the content itself, right, if they say this tool sucks, right, let them say it. Ask why, right?
Yeah.
And what I found is that then the rest of the community who doesn't agree will counter it. And
it's kind of like social media.
With hopefully with some more guardrails than what you
That's
see.
right. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, so another thing you and I talked about is that and I see this too, right? I've seen comments about people sort of accumulating tools, agents, spending sort of unexpected large amounts of money on tokens, things like that with some of these tools. So when you use the word agent sprawl, right? How do you think about that versus maybe a more appropriate adoption of AI that it might be more useful for organization?
Yeah, it's a great question, and not having a perfect answer by any means, but just observing what I've seen in kind of the evolution. We just talked about the idea of having tools was the first thing, and then prompt techniques were everywhere, right? And everybody was sharing those prompt techniques, and that was kind of a nice, fun little age where people were just playing with these things. And then, of course, agents come around, and just to kind of define what agents are for this point here I'm making is the
Sure.
Copilot agents within Microsoft 365, or the ChatGPTs within OpenAI, or Gemini Gems, and things like that. Now, there are some other a little more robust agents that folks were building, but by and large, the citizen developed agents that are in play,
Mm-hmm.
that are out there. And I'll take it a little further. There were folks paying for, more production level and for development companies to build some agents too. But the problem with it all was it was all done kind of in a vacuum, and all done in terms of, we need this now, let's build it, and we're not going to think about how everything connects together. What my colleague is doing, or what this other department over here is doing. Not going to think about all the governance or any of these things. We're just going to do it. In part, that was also because leaders were saying use AI or else. They were freeing up budgets to invest in AI, and they just said go. And so what we ended up having was all these agents. Some of them were duplicate efforts. A lot of them were lower quality citizen developed agents. Things that were helping, like product marketing or sales outreach or content development or analysis, and they were doing some things. But they, by and large, weren't being used in the most efficient ways, the most productive ways, and there was just a lot of waste. So that's what I call that agent sprawl factor.
Yeah.
We saw this a lot at enterprise, but I think it was happening pretty much everywhere, even in midsize, et cetera. But that's the agent sprawl. But I'm happy to go further and talk about why that happened and what we can do about it, and what's the next evolution, if you like, as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think I definitely see it. I don't think it's isolated to, in fact, there's a part of me that thinks that it's probably less of an issue in enterprise organizations because they're so hard to move. There's a part of me that thinks it's like in like early stage small companies where people sort of, they just figure shit out how to get things done, right? They're going to be adopted with less of that 4-letter word governance, right? Yeah. So I'm curious, are you seeing some of that more in enterprise organizations? Or are you seeing more of it in mid to smaller companies?
It's definitely both. I agree with your point on the mid-size is the kind of the one where it's the most propensity for enough people to do some things, but less governance. So that's where it's happening. Probably the biggest problem area. Smaller, there's just not enough people to mess it up anyway. So you're kind of okay.
Yeah.
And the implications are
the risk is lower in terms of like the scope. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And then, but enterprise, definitely saw it. Now they have. And I work with Microsoft, Google, SAP, AWS. So we're talking about big cloud enterprise,
Sure.
Adobe. There's a couple other hyperscalers we work with and that kind of thing, and their partners. But now, what I saw there, we're in the midst of, is there was a whole fix my agent phase. So they citizen developed, and then we came in and fixed their agent, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now, so they were seeing it, and then our responsible AI started really coming down the pipe, right? And so, in particular, at the Microsoft area, responsible AI is a huge part of now of the overall. Just getting an agent into their system now is becoming a big thing. But the fix my agent was the thing for a little while. The biggest thing that's happening now is that's this stakeholder in this one business unit over here is talking to this stakeholder because they have teams and matrices, across all these different areas. They're very similar in a lot of ways. Microsoft's maybe a little more matrix oriented, but they're now going, wait, you're doing this, I'm doing this, you're doing this. Maybe we can bring these things together. So they're getting pretty proactive about bringing things together and not just working in their silos.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's the one it's the benefit of having a large organization. You probably, if thinking about bell curve I mentioned, right, there's going to be just more volume of people at any one particular place in terms of their propensity to use the tools. So So curious, and I think you and I, when we talked about like you're thinking about evolving, you're thinking about AI and how to incorporate it, implementing it, all that has evolved over time. So if I remember right, you you felt pretty strongly that you need to wire together end to end kind of automated workflows, call them agents, whatever.
Yeah.
But it sounds like I think in our conversation, it sounds like your perspective has shifted. So maybe talk about like, yeah, what was your belief at kind of early, and then how has it evolved, and what is it that's changed in that process?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that question, and that is really probably at the center of the thinking that I'm really focusing on now with the teams that I work with as well is the reality of the concept of an end-to-end workflow where you can, first of all, just agree on the key steps of that workflow. Say it's a sales prospecting all the way down to nurture, down to some level of conversion,
Sure.
or a content pipeline or whatever it may be, especially in go-to-market. The idea that there are quote unquote key steps and micro tasks that happen that are rinse and repeatable all along that cycle
Mm-hmm.
is a little more illusion than reality. Like
Yeah.
you want it to be true. Theoretically, it sounds like it can be true, but then you get in to do the work and you find out everyone's different. You
Yeah.
find out there's nuance to it, and there's like customization all the time that's necessary for
Shadow
different.
processes, shadow
Yeah,
systems, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You got all these different things that you weren't aware of, and you always. And this goes back to all the days that we tried to engineer workflows, right? We've been trying to be agile for years, or not just that, not scratch that word agile. I don't really mean it. I meant it in the kind of the
Not the
initial
general
way.
CERN, not the
Yeah,
methodology. I get it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When we first started talking about workflows, this is how old I am. But the point is that we've been trying to do this for a long time. And so we thought AI would be the forcing function in a way to get our
Mm-hmm.
stuff together so that we could have the right AI doing things and human in the loop or human on the loop, and we can construct these things. But the struggle was not only just that can we get something that is rinse and repeatable, but then getting human beings to be in the loop.
Yeah.
It's like rallying cats, right? To come in and do this thing and to believe and to buy into it and all that stuff. Now, I'm not saying I gave up on that. I do think there's a certain pieces of the puzzle or the pipeline where you can come in and get some pretty nice wired workflows. And having AI autonomously do some pieces of the puzzle that would be called agentic workflows. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely real.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just decided that the bigger opportunity and the thing that we kind of just rushed right past is just getting people to be better at using the tools that they have and expanding out the workspaces, which I won't go into that right now. I think we're going to probably talk
Sure.
about that a little bit more,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that is what I've seen. I know it's contrary to everything you're seeing on LinkedIn. I get it. They're all workflow first, and I was writing about workflow first a year ago. I was
Yeah.
talking to my leaders in companies, but as we've tried to do it, it just hasn't always played out the way we expected it to.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. So when I hear you talk about that, I'm thinking like a workflow. Like let's say you can even agree on like your point about agreeing on what the steps are. Right? But let's say you've got general agreement, you've got 10 steps, and you
Yeah.
try to automate the entire process. Is that what you're talking about? Like, yeah,
Uh,
okay.
yeah,
Part of
that's a
this
good
automate.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's when I look at workflows, it's always going to be some mix of what AI can do, what automation can be done, and then humans take a piece of the puzzle and then they're
Mm-hmm.
human in the loop. But it requires this official formal design of a workflow,
Mm-hmm.
and that's this conflict. So I've seen a lot of again, I was talking about this over years ago, and I'm taking back just a little bit. Is that a lot of folks have said you have to invert, and that's what I was saying, back then too. It's like invert from um, people first to workflow first. And so instead
Mm-hmm.
of hiring people, and this has implications for how you change your workforce and who you hire and all that kind of stuff. You're hiring
Absolutely.
for the
For
workflow
sure.
versus having people do it and then have them use tools. So it's just, and again, I haven't given up on it, Michael. I do think that there are some spots where this is useful. But I think that this sort of blanket statement around workflow first mentality is not as practical as it sounds.
Yeah. And the reason I asked you that, I remember seeing LinkedIn posts when I was still sort of I feel like I was late to dipping my toes into using tools like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever on an individual basis, and kind of thinking about it as I was working on a problem or some sort of deliverable, right? It wasn't my normal. It took a while for that to become a part of how I thought about getting things done. But what I remember seeing is some people who had tried to do, whether it was, you call it agentic workflows or whatever, that had like lots of sort of AI components in an overall automated workflow, right? Maybe there was
Yeah.
some human in the loop component to it. And like people were sharing, like, this is what I'm doing, here's what it looks like. And then it felt like it wasn't that long after where I started to feel like, actually what we find is if something goes off the rails at one step,
Yeah.
right, it has this cascading effect. Um, yeah, it's, to me, it's like, I think about like, oh, okay, if I'm, this is going to maybe offend some people. Like if you're shooting a gun at a target, right, and the farther the target is away, right, any little variance is going to mean at the end, when you get to that target, it's going to be way off. And it feels like that's kind of what it was happening, is like people are like, oh, I'm going to automate this whole thing, but then something would break here. And actually what I think I remember is like, not only did it would break somewhere, it was harder to figure out where something went off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, again, we would probably need 15 different use cases to really
Sure.
dissect this. And if you're doing data consumption and you're extracting data and turning it into some organized form, and then that's then manifesting an email that gets pushed to your business leaders, maybe that's a useful automation. That probably would work most of the time. If you're having AI make decisions for you based on some level of criteria, I think your example comes into play more. It's like, yeah, that could go off the rails. That's not quite
Yeah.
right. And then you have the AI for all its promise, and I love it. Look, I use AI every day. This is what I do for a living. But
Sure.
the generative AI portions they're just not quite right yet all the time, and so we can't just have it do things for us, and do it in these automated ways. But as you add human in the loop components to it. The biggest problem we have there is then, so let's say that you have an end-to-end, I'll just do a content engine real quickly. We'll do a campaign in a box concept real quick.
Got it.
So a campaign in a box, you would have a creative brief for what the campaign is. You're probably marketing a specific product or service. You have target personas. You have probably a messaging and positioning framework that governs that, brand guidelines, all these things that can help you kind of put together a content campaign. And maybe your content campaign has an ebook, and then maybe it has a one-pager, and then it has reach out emails, nurture streams, ads, all these things that are kind of in that campaign that help that.
Sure.
Well, if you put together an end-to-end workflow that says we're going to pipeline this thing, we're going to say AI is going to do this part, humans are going to do this part, AI is going to come next, and blah, blah, blah. You put this whole thing together, and you say, got it. We got this really streamlined thing. Our efficiencies are going to go down. We still have quality gates. I mean, all these things are great. And then you go put that into practice. Well, you've got writer X over here that has to pick it up after this. Where did it go? Where's the project management tool we're going to use? What's the status of this thing? Well, now do we have to put a project management tool in this thing? Okay, and people have done that. And then it's like, what's next after that? What's next after that? And so what you thought was this theoretically easy end-to-end thing, it started to get really complicated when there was new writers coming in. Oh, that person was fired. No, they're not here anymore. Oh, that it's like there's just the idea that it's just going to somehow work. That's the problem. But you try.
Yeah. So you hinted at this a few minutes ago about the idea or concept of I think you call it connected workspaces. So rather in that as an alternative. So first off, maybe like you did earlier, like what's the definition of a connected workspace? How's it different than some of these other scenarios we talked about where things seem to be appear to be connected but aren't really, right? They're disconnected. And then what does that look like? Do you have an example or something where you can talk about in the practice, maybe what you just went through as a variance?
Yeah, I think we've been evolving to this in general with different solutions of late, and I'll try to lay this out and without having like visuals and kind of looking at these examples. I think it might be a little hard to follow, but I'll do the best I can to kind of lay this out. we've talked about some of the underlying problems, the agent sprawl, for example, right? You think of a marketing team or a sales team, or any go-to-market team, right? And they are working. They started off. They got these tools. They're starting to work in silos. They're building all these, and we got the agent sprawl issue. You then go, okay, well, why don't we create workflows that will, again, we just talked about the workflows. These are all part and parcel where let's end to end, we're going to have agent X come in here, human in the loop do Y, and things like that. So that was another sort of way to address the kind of the work to be done in that area. And we've already talked about some of those problems. So now what we have is like co-work spaces that are growing up. So popularity of Claude and co-work, and Microsoft has its own its own co-work space, and we'll see more and more of these. But these are really personal workspaces still, where people are doing work and they're doing it in all their one-off ways in their own idiosyncratic personal ways, which is what they should do. But what I think is emerging is you still have marketing teams, you still have sales teams, and you even have teams within those teams that do work together. And so what I'm seeing is this concept of a connected workspace where it's built around a specific team's needs. And it's anchored in all the data that they work together with, the documentation they work with, the processes too. But
it's a shared context. It's
a shared context. And so one example we've been building out recently has been around product marketing teams that also, of course, do activation campaigns. They also do sales enablement and things like that. So you get it at a crossroads and you go, well, aren't there some tools out there that we can just buy? And then you go down the buy world and you go like, well, no, not quite right. It doesn't quite fit me. It's not exactly what it was. And then what do we do with all of our data? Like, is that just all over there? Like, what are we doing with this? So what I'm seeing is, and we're building out a couple of these recently, they've been really resonating with clients. And so we're happy that that's happening. Yeah. That's always good.
Market validation is always good.
Yeah. So this is kind of an exciting area where we're building all those agents that were kind of disconnected, or they were just plugged into Microsoft 365, or they were GPTs or whatever those. Instead, we're building one space where all the product marketing needs are there, where you can build the vision and mission statement for the product, the overviews, the features and benefits, the ICPs, all there, but it gets stored in a data layer. So it's not just knowledge sources that are unstructured, like all these documents that are putting in there. Okay. We're storing it in a data layer. And then they go to create blogs, or they create ebooks and things like that. And that's all getting stored in a data layer. And so are all the chat sessions. So what we're creating is really this completely connected space around a business function where all the rich data is being built up over time. And so when you go to each agent to build something, whether you're building the blog or you're building a draft of an email sequence and all that kind of stuff, instead of having to reground every one of those agents in the documents, it's pulling from the same data layer across everything. And it's creating a much more powerful way to do work and do it at scale. And I think that I don't know where this all will go. I'm just saying what I see, Michael, and what we're building.
I swear, like, I've given up trying to predict, because it's like, it feels like every time I turn around, there's some new thing out there. And if I go back to, like, we talked about, like, the adoption of different types of companies. I mean, I know of at least one organization that I've heard where developed their own sort of tool for people to use, LLM kind of tool based on some of the other models, and then using IP restrictions, like, blocked all the other ones. Well, new ones are popping up all the time for specific use cases, and people are getting around it, or they turn off a VPN or whatever, right? It's like, I mean, that's the stuff that's really happening out there.
Yeah, the shadow AI, I've actually got a post that's going to go out in the next few days. I've been doing a research piece around it first, and I'm going to post around it on shadow AI and what to do about that. And I think that we're seeing first it's like, don't ask, don't tell. And then it's like, let's be punitive. Let's do all that. But then I think the next phase, which I believe we need to look at very closely, is let's let that be a tell in the market. What do people want? Because these are the people that want to use things. And so ask them, embrace it, intake what they're doing. And then maybe you could put together a plan about which tools you're going to buy to support them. Even though shadow AI is still going to be there, at least you're embracing what's happening and know that that's not nefarious. It's like, I just want to do my work better. I want to
Yeah.
be faster and
Yeah.
embrace it, in other words. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm again kind of going back to this. Like, I would rather have that be in the open and know about it than
Yeah.
to think it's not happening because and then people feel like they can't talk about it. I think that's a worse kind of outcome. So you talked about a data layer, and I want to maybe dive into that a little bit because I'm not sure this is exactly what you were talking about. So if not, that's fine. We can kind of connect the dots here, but. Yeah, one of the challenges I think everyone in ops would tell you is like our data sucks and go to market, right? Whether it's marketing, sales, whatever, especially in complex B2B sales stuff. How two-part question, because I have so how important do you think that data quality is to enabling these kind of tools? And then one thing that I would like to see, I haven't heard a lot of people talking about, is I'd like to see AI being used to help improve the data quality and completeness. Just like as a like so. In other words, don't wait for the data to be whatever. We pick the level you want, right? And before you start using AI tools for other things, but like, how can the AI tools help expose and correct the data? Like, what's your take on all that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Michael. And I think to just say it and state the data is a problem is one thing, but to then unravel like what's inside all of that as you work through it. And I think it's a problem in so many ways, and it's always been a problem. It's just that AI is now exposing it, because as you try to really leverage the power of AI, which essentially is like it just needs data, it just loves data, it can't do anything without data, really to really be effective or to be differentiating or useful. So you just could go across any area of the go-to-market space, all the way down, up and down the customer journey, if you will, and you're going to find, well, you can't personalize outreach if you don't have data, right? You can't you can't have on-point battle cards in sales enablement if you don't have data. I mean, you can wing it as much as you want, but you're going to need that intake. And so the struggle we have, is that data in an unstructured form is not all that useful. It has to be structured, and we know that. But so how do you go about doing that is the question, and how do you pull from all these sources? Well, sometimes it's just a matter of, like, you can't even get access to a lot of data. Like, sometimes it's not collecting the right data. Think of all the, just the entire trail. We're not collecting all the data properly. There's that. But sometimes even within organizations, it's just so many systems, whether it's within Salesforce or different CRMs, or maybe it's all your ad data over here, your customer intelligence or feedback loops, the market research that you do that's over here. And so we're like, just recently I've been working on competitive intelligence a lot for whatever reason. I have sold 2 competitive intelligence solutions. And it's really rearing its ugly head around, like, well, we have external data sources we can grab with AI, which that's available on a lot of levels. But where are all your internal sources? Like, well, there's documents just gathered everywhere.
Right.
There's CRM data, there's sales forecasting data, there's our customer feedback data, and it's everywhere. But the challenge is then, how do you get access to it, pull it together, normalize it so it can actually be used, and then you can actually have AI do all kinds of levels of RAG responses and ingestion of it and do things with it.
Right.
But it's a long process, and it's the thing that, the biggest thing I would say is this, and like, if you go macro, sometimes we can dissect these things, but if you want to just put it as a big equation, data is super important. Leadership doesn't want to invest in it because they don't understand it. It's not sexy. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
The immediate,
there's not an immediate obvious value to bring the effort and cost. Totally.
They don't want to invest in it, but it's super important. It's so crappy output. It's the simplest equation in the world. But I think that the good thing is that AI has exposed a lot of things, and we talk about this a lot. Exposed our workflow process issues. We've exposed talent and skilling issues. Has exposed data issues, and I think that's one of the best sort of value benefits we've gotten out of AI.
Yeah, I think I think so too. Like I still feel like there's a play here to use AI to help with that data quality
Yeah,
piece. I don't know what it would look like. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, if I agree. No, AI, it's one of its beautiful things it can do is it can organize, right? It's taxonomy.
Yeah.
It's so much better than us, and it's so much faster. And so I agree with you on that. In fact, we were doing a project. There's another project we're working on where it's first thing we're doing is we're just doing some data auditing, and we want to build some dashboards for OKRs, the objectives and key results for a quarter. And so the first thing we're doing is we're going through like 15 different dashboards that have already been created. It's just like nuts. And
Dashboards is a 4-letter word to me.
yeah, it is at this point, if you do it right to some degree, but the problem is people never go to, there's a lot of problems with dashboards. But
yeah, anyway.
nonetheless, we can use AI to go into these data systems, which, the inconsistencies of data across all those systems,
Sure,
those dashboards. We are using AI to go in and extract all that and create a master taxonomy, like a sensible master taxonomy that can come all of that in order to then build the next dashboard. But then we'll also have push, notification, push information and things like that will come off of it. But that's one way AI can just intelligently sift through it and suggest a better taxonomy. That's a simple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure somebody's got to be doing this, right? A very common thing for in the ops world, both marketing and sales ops probably is get an external list. You got to normalize country or state or whatever, right? And I'm like, that's or normalize job levels, right, based on titles.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a powerful way of using it, right? Doing that organization for you and doing it dynamically, right? So over time, like it adjusts based on what the real data is.
Yeah.
And what it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I'll just say that the basis of the business I'm building, Infinite Ideas AI, is all based on the idea that AI can create new and unique data in the market.
Right.
And so that's, not only agreeing with you, like, it's like, to me, I was looking at the way all the signals that are out there in the world, not just around conversations on Twitter or Reddit and things like that, and right. Sort of the typical sentiment analysis and things like that, but just taking the everyday sort of things that are happening out there and turning them into real signals. What's the velocity of investment in a specific space? What's the if you knew what your current product was and you saw something happening, some news item happening in the market, how related is this news item to my product line, and should I do something about it? And you could score that, right?
Right.
And so
like a risk assessment or an opportunity assessment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's interesting your point. Like this is the other thing that really, it wasn't until I was talking to someone who was a writer at one point, and we were talking about something else, and I threw in the question like, oh, what do you like? Because I'm assuming most writers detest, right, these LLMs for what they do, and this person was like, well, we do breaking news, so they can help us make our writing better, but they can't break new news because there's nothing to go on.
That's right. I do love that part. And when people were talking about content creation at first, that was kind of an area that I was like, well, you can always do new reporting. You can always do new things. There's things happening everywhere, and that are unique that LMs are not trained on, not yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's this whole thing I saw that, like, if you're a top performer in whatever you think you're going to use AI for, the likelihood that you're going to stay a top performer is actually pretty low. Like, it's going to bring you down to the median, right? And if you're a poor performer, it's going to help you up. Like, so.
Oh, interesting. I like that.
I mean, I was like, oh yeah, that's like, oh yeah. Like, so if you're a top performer, should you be using AI? Well, maybe you should be using AI differently. It begs a lot of interesting sort of questions that go beyond that.
Great point on that one. It's an equalizer. We used to say that when we were playing. I played a lot of basketball in my life. I still play a lot of basketball. And when we played basketball in the rain, it's like, well, there went your speed advantage. That's gone.
Yeah.
It's like there's no first step in the rain. So, everybody was equally the same speed in the rain.
Yeah. for sure. Outdoor basketball, or if there's a lot of wind, right? There
Yeah,
goes your
a lot of
shot.
wind. Yeah, football,
Yeah,
same, right? If it's raining or snowing, like it doesn't really matter who was better anymore.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, all kinds of good sports analogies there, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So I want to, I'm going to kind of take two ends of sort of the whole process of AI adoption, and I would like to get your thoughts on sort of both because it feels like there's a linkage. The first is for the people who are listening or watching this, right? How should they be thinking about if they're leaders, how should they be thinking about how to get AI initiatives started, right? What should they be doing? Maybe what should they not be doing? What are some guiding principles there? Should they be looking at doing things like building versus buying, especially if it's like, call it agentic stuff? I hesitate to even use that term, but then the one that keeps coming up regularly now is, and how do they set things up so they know that they can measure the benefit I think really from a financial standpoint? Maybe there's non-financial benefits too, but like, what's your take on that? It's big-ended, open-ended question for you there.
yeah, yeah. That's good questions. And I think that's what we're in that era now. Like we had the fun, there was sort of blank checks written. It's like we'll figure this out later. The competition's doing it, and so we got to do it. If we don't do it, we may be left behind. Fear factors, all that stuff. And now it's like, okay, wait a minute. Where's the real ROI, and how should we really be deliberate and have some sort of method to our madness and how we actually make decisions around this, which I love, which is kind of the area I focus a lot on. And so
Sure.
now having an expertise in that area actually makes a difference. I don't know. It's kind of interesting because I always look at like how many people are actually Googling or what's the trends around AI strategy or something like that, you know? And we see that uptick. I kind of follow that a lot being in the strategy space. And it's like, I think they're starting to get the point that we might have to think about this and that kind of thing. But you know, when you're looking at, if we start with, I guess, a buy versus build, I'll kind of give you a couple of anecdotes on this to kind of show you the difference and might help guide the decision. It's really going to come down to, and this has always been the case in buy versus build. This is not a new thing, right?
I think I know where this is going. Okay, go.
Yeah, you know, it's like how bespoke to your business does it need to be, and because there is going to be a place. There's going to be a time when it's just needs to be more bespoke. It's not like it's one size fits all will fit all. It's just we know that's not true. Even if more precision like level and more nuanced and niched oriented solutions, it still can come up short. I'll give you an example of a client I just met with yesterday, actually. And it was interesting. I was glad to hear it. You know, it was like, look, I can go to compete intelligence tools right now. I know I can do that. I told you I was kind of working on a couple of compete solutions lately. But it doesn't help me because it's not bespoke enough to me. It doesn't work with the data that I really want it to work with. It doesn't deliver it the way I need to deliver it. It doesn't have the lenses or the views or the outputs in the ways I need to see it. So there's just one thing after another. And so I think if you're going to do a buy versus build situation, that's the number one thing you got to be looking at is, and sometimes it's, there's nothing wrong with, I remember getting this question a long time ago. It's like, there's really nothing wrong with buying now and then building later.
Right.
You know, you can gap it, you know, you can get, and you might learn from the buy experience to then maybe build later too. So sometimes a decision is just better than nothing at all.
Yeah. Well, I think so what I expected you to be talking about is the trade-off, right? For
Yeah.
getting something more bespoke is that now you're taking on support and development maintenance.
You know, that's a great point. I do want to, when you're ready, I want to comment on that
Go.
one too.
That's it. That's it.
Okay, good. Yeah. No, I love that point. And this is the crazy world we live in with vibe coding, you know, and with agentic level coding. And it's like where you would have to buy in the past, you may be able to spin something up that's reasonable. And I mean, like someone who knows what they're doing. I don't mean like go out to, Lovable or Bolt and just like put up a prototype, because a lot of vibe coding is just prototypes. They're not working. But doing a lot of development with working with developers a lot, with Cursor and now with Cloud Code and things like that. You can get things pretty bespoke for sure, but you can get it on point and in market with some level of MVP pretty quickly now. So the build versus buy equation has changed because of that. I'm not saying that that's for everyone. I'm just noting that it's changed the equation.
Fair enough. True. Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. But there's still that is something you have to take on, right? It's not a zero cost.
It's technical debt. And, you don't know where it's going. That's the big unknown. You will never know where something you're building is going to go. And then you need good product managers. And I think that's always a way misunderstood skill set in the world.
Yeah.
Product managers know how to evaluate something for its business impact. They know how to t-shirt size things. They know how big they are and how long they're going to take and how much they're going to cost. They're going to know the technical debt, but most organizations don't have that muscle, so to speak.
No,
but they think they have it.
Yeah, no, I think so too. So there's the buy versus build. Like, how are you seeing companies that are successful in measuring the impact of AI initiatives?
Yeah, another great one, right? And so you can build all the ROI calculators you want. There's a lot of them out there.
All models are inherently flawed, right?
We can vibe code one right now if you want.
Right.
No, but seriously on this, there are some things you can do before and after. I mean, there are clear things where like conversion rates on a sales funnel or something like that is a clear thing that can make a difference. If you've got outreach, like you've got volume and quality equations with, say, outreach and sales, you can get a hold of, did the quality versus the quantity game work? Was the personalization of this AI helping me in this matter? Mm-hmm. You can do obviously time to be able to make decisions. Like decision time is huge when it comes to data and how you can ingest it and things like that. Those are things that I think you can get a hold of. But a lot of it's just going to be pure qualitative, and I think a lot of people are scared of the qualitative. But I love it. I mean, I like the idea of go ask your people. I mean, what's wrong with that?
Yeah. The analogy I think you and I talked about was it's sort of like attribution reporting, which is the
there you go.
And I think it's right. It's like it's rife with all kinds of data issues and challenges with measuring, and you can't capture everything. But I'm with you, right? I'm a big believer that a lot of marketers. And part of why I think the perception of them sometimes in organizations is not great. It's because they forget to use the skill they should be really good at, just storytelling within their organization.
Storytelling, there you go. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that point a lot. I'm going to bank that one for sure. Because I mean that's the truth. Have all these. What I'm dealing with a lot is CEOs or leaders in orgs that have to get a board ready thing. They have to. It's like it's going to be storytelling no matter what you do here, because there is no way to say anything right now that would make everyone happy. I mean, there are investments being made. There are lots of proof of concepts. There are a lot of things that we're trying to do and understand, but you have to make the investments to get to the next step. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. And so it's not the thing that a board member wants to hear, or like someone who's paying and making the investment, because it's not it's not how they want to work. They just want results, right? But the reality is, I've actually said it the other day. It was like wow, yeah, it's right. Like this is kind of a cool concept. Where the whole world is in an R&D phase right now. Yeah. We're making investments in things that we just need to figure them out, and we're all collectively doing it together.
Well, and I know of at least one person on LinkedIn who's been posting regularly in the last 2 months, probably. Here we are, mid-June 2026, about like how these organizations are, the CFOs are all of a sudden seeing large chunks of money going out the door. So say they're using, pick the Clay is the easy target here, right?
Yeah.
People are like, oh, look at all this great stuff. We can replace something like Zoom Info and do this waterfall enrichment process. And then the bill comes in for what it costs to do that. And it's this hidden cost that I think are going to drive there's going to be the forcing function that's going to push people to go like, we've got to figure out some way of measuring the impact, because otherwise there's just too much money leaking out of the organization.
Yeah, totally. and not only that, modify behavior because of it, because token costs really are becoming huge, more than the token war, or like the model war. I feel like they all figured it out. We'll just keep charging people and keep promoting fear that they don't get the latest model.
Yeah.
They're in
Yeah.
trouble. Um,
Yeah. Anyway. Well, this has been great. This has been good. So, like, maybe let's wrap up here. And it's too bad Mike Rizzo couldn't join us, because I think he would like us to ask. He would want me to ask this question he would if he was here, which is, I think I think the two of you talked before. He said that you have a similar view as him and some others, that like future CMOs are going to come out of an ops space, or at least have a background in ops. So I'm curious, like, is that true for you? And then if so, the sense I get is you think that like AI, like a lot of this AI activity is going to be something that might accelerate that process.
yeah, no, yeah, completely agree with Mike on that. And I think it's a macro thing across leadership, but it's particularly in this area. Um, you know, Leaders of the past, and I actually did some research on this because I was wondering about what's the shift in terms of technology driven or oriented leaders versus like the classical, like maybe financially oriented or
Mm-hmm.
some sales oriented leaders, like if you look at the CEOs
Sure.
and things like
Yep.
that. And it is shifting considerably, and you see in a lot of key companies, like the NVIDIAs and the even Microsoft, when it shifted to more of a tech oriented, they got their stuff together. Microsoft was becoming a joke, right? And then 7, 8
Yeah.
years ago, they shifted, and now they're getting track. And we see this everywhere. And I think it's the same within marketing ops and marketing. I mean, how can you possibly lead an organization, right, with not having some felt or understanding? Like, you got to feel things. It's like I don't know if you've seen White Man Can't Jump. It's a movie. Woody
It's been a
Harrelson.
long time, but yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you can feel, you hear Jimmy, but you can't feel Jimmy when he's talking about Jimi Hendrix, right? It's like,
Uh, yeah.
um,
Yeah. I don't
but
remember the
anyway,
scene, but it's a true statement, I think. Yeah.
yeah, that's the difference. Like, you can't go into like just hearing it and somehow you got to feel it. You have to have been there. And it's always hard for me to kind of talk to people, like, and explain to them why you can intuitively understand how something's built. Well, if you built something 100 times, you just know. You just can see it, and you know where it's
Yeah.
going, kind of. You're not always right, but you got a real good sense of it.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't have that, you're really in trouble. And it's just, I can't see how it plays out. Um,
Yeah.
Now, there's one other piece of that puzzle. I do still think you need leadership skills. Like, leadership skills are a thing. You got
Absolutely.
to know how orgs work. You got to know how to sell something internally. You got to know how to work with people and lay the groundwork. All those things are, everyone, we know about leadership skills, but that a powerful combination of having that marketing ops background and knowing how this thing functionally works and feeling it,
Mm-hmm.
plus the leadership skills, I think is the combination.
Yeah, love it. Okay. Well, I'm glad we got to get into that question a little bit. So hopefully people will stick around and listen to that. That's an important piece. Hey, so Paul, again, thanks for joining us. If folks want to continue, like they're interested in continuing and going deeper on some of these topics with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, go out to LinkedIn, Paul Shirer, PaulShirer. I'm the only Paul Shirer I think out there. There was one other. He's got a financial planning company, and we talked. He's up in San Diego. He's a good guy. But no, Paul Shirer. I'm literally Paul Shirer. And then Infinite Ideas AI is
Okay.
the business I've launched, and would love to even hear feedback on that if you all get a chance to take a look at it.
Fantastic. Again, Paul, thank you. Thanks to our audience out there for continuing to support us. We are always grateful for your input and support. And if you have ideas for topics or guests or want to be a guest, you can reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we'd be happy to get the ball rolling. Till next time, bye, everybody.